So this is our 8th week, and I know you know what we did, but up until now, what we've done is every week we looked at a different time period, and we looked at primary sources. So we looked at Jewish families talking about Jewish families, for the most part, to see how Jewish families lived during that time period. And sometimes we would take a look at how-to books. So we would look at, this is how you should raise your Jewish child. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look first at an article about the state of the Jewish family today that I took from the most recent version of the Encyclopedia Judaica. And then we're going to look at excerpts from these 4 books, all of which are how-to books on how to raise a Jewish family. So what I want us to do is those 4 questions there are 3 questions. What is the status of Jewish families today? And then the second question is Jewish parenting good parenting? So based upon our understanding of what it means to be a good parent today, is raising a Jewish child, does that coincide with being a good parent? You know, if we listened to comedians from 20 or 30 years ago talking about their Jewish mothers, it would have been a very clear story that Jewish parenting was not good parenting. But what's our understanding of that today? And then the last piece is there consensus or is there general feeling that we have to teach young people today who have little kids how to be a good Jewish parent? Does it come naturally, or do we have to teach them how to do it? So that's what I want to address. The fact that I've got 4 books here all teaching about how to be a good Jewish parent says something to you about what's out there. Okay, so.
If I need a pen, I'll let somebody know. No, it's like, you know you have it, and then it's gone.
And then here is, you can hold on to this.
But this
and
is
you
mine.
can hold on to this.
Well, I knew that I had put it.
You can hold on to this, and you can hold on to this.
Is it? Oh,
And,
it looks just like the present Jewish.
During the, we're going to read excerpts from each of those books, but as I encourage you to look through the book, especially to look through the table of contents as we're moving forward, to see what the general orientation of these books are, what they're trying to say. So you have 2 eyes, so you can keep one eye on the article and another eye on the book. So we're going to start out with right over here. Contemporary American Jewish family. All right, so I'll start to read. Any discussion of American Jewish family life as an institution must view it within the context of contemporary American social, economic, and political life. All contemporary American Jews are Jews by choice in that their relationship with the Jewish people, Judaism, and its institutions is voluntary. They have freedom and feel part of mainstream American life. To me, that first paragraph, the operational word is Jews by choice. So what does that say to you? That American Jews today?
We choose to be Jewish.
Right.
We don't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
And lots choose not to be.
Right. So
Right.
for really, on a broad level, this is the first time in our history where Jews have complete liberty as whether be Jewish or not Jewish. There were times when they chose not to be Jewish, when they were forced not to be Jewish or strongly encouraged not to be Jewish. But now for the first time, we're all Jews by choice. You know, the term Jews by choice is a term that's usually used for reserved for converts. But here it's saying that we're all Jews by choice. Okay, you want to read the next paragraph? Read the next paragraph?
Sure. The experience of the Jewish family in the United States over the past century has been one of acculturation and accommodation to the norms and values of American society. The diversity within Jewish life precludes a description of archetypal contemporary American Jewish family.
Okay, you understand what that means?
Yeah, that we're all so different.
Yeah.
There is no one Jewish
Right,
family.
there is no such thing as a single Jewish family. Okay, next part's important because it kind of summarizes everything we've done in the past 7 weeks. Okay, keep going.
Continue?
Yep.
In contrast, according to Glatzer, the historic Jewish family, at least in theory, in 1959, was, number one, patriarchal, Number 2, 3-generational. Number 3, home-oriented. Number 4, pious. And number 5, devoted to study, particularly the Bible, Talmud, and other Jewish texts.
Okay, so this is Glatzer's summary of everything that we've been talking about for the past 7 weeks. That if you looked at the traditional Jewish family, who was the head of the Jewish family for the most part, was the father. And then it was 3-generational, there's usually grandparents, parents, and kids. That it was home-oriented, most of the stuff took place in the home. That it was pious, that most people were from, not all, but from more or less, and devoted to study, particularly Bible, Talmud, and other Jewish texts. So that was Jewish families up until 1890, or in some places up until 1940. But that was how you could generally describe a Jewish family up until relatively recently. And now what the article is saying is,
Ain't necessarily.
ain't necessarily so.
Up until the time of the television set.
Okay, all right, keep going.
Could be.
As in all other modern Jewish societies, the majority of Jewish families in the United States today, and perhaps the majority of Jewish families in the typology suggested, bears scant resemblance to Glatzer's model of pre-modern European Jewish family.
Okay, so nothing is the same anymore. So if I were to ask each of you to write down what you thought was the prototypical Jewish family, you would all have different ways of describing it. Fran? Prototypical.
Many Jewish families.
Like a prototype.
Yeah, I get that, but I again, I think it's
Well, that's what they're saying, that
the
there
world
isn't one.
defies that. There is no prototypical
Right.
Jewish
Right,
family
that's what
anymore.
he's saying. Many Jewish families still share certain distinctive socioeconomic characteristics, such as they are middle or upper middle class, are politically to the left of center, and socialize often with other Jews. But many from day to day are hardly distinguishable from their non-Jewish neighbors. In a profound way, the religion most practiced by American Jewish families has been America itself. Its freedoms, democracy, openness, and unprecedented opportunities.
So the author here is saying that the religion most practiced by Jews is Americanism, right?
Yeah.
So the vast majority of Jews just see themselves as American and all of the American values. Okay, one more paragraph.
The transition from tradition and self-segregation characterizes the development of the American Jewish family in the United States. These processes affected virtually every aspect of the family life, from size and residential patterns to marriage and career choices. There are some who see this process as having weakened the Jewish family, lending it in the direction of ultimate extinction as a distinctive type. Others see evidence of surprising strength and the maintenance of tradition in a world of dramatic change, often citing the same evidence. They perceive the Jewish family as having successfully transformed itself in response to the conditions of its environment, requiring perhaps only some redefinition.
Okay, so two groups of people are looking at the same evidence, and what's one group saying and what's the other group saying?
We're going down the toilet.
And the other one
side
says, we're
says-
getting stronger.
That's right.
And
Right.
I see both of those. Some parts are going down the toilet, and where others are clinging stronger
Right.
to their traditions.
No, but even within the same family. So if you look at a Jewish family that celebrates Hanukkah and maybe has a Passover meal, so one group of people would look at that group and say, oh my God, what happened to the traditional family? They're going down the tubes. The other family would say, no, this is an American Jewish family. They're maintaining some semblance of what it means to be Jewish. And look, even within the American society, they maintain themselves as Jews. So you have the same thing going both ways. All right, I skipped like about 5 pages. Not on your sheets. But I left out the entire middle of this article that talks about Jewish families from like the 1900s to the late 1900s, early 1900s to the late 1900s. I left that out. So the last piece here is just the piece on what the understanding is of the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century, what's happening with Jewish families. Okay.
At the end of the 20th century, the American Jewish family more strongly resembled its non-Jewish neighbor than its own forebear of 100 years ago.
Goldstein and other survivalists insist that Jewish families continue to maintain sufficient distinctive collectivist, socioeconomic, and sociocultural characteristics to guarantee continuity, at least for the foreseeable future. Cohen argues that the current intermarriage and birth rates will result in a smaller but qualitatively stronger American Jewish community on the family level rather than group level for the vast majority of families. Intermarriage eventually severs the links to future generations of the Jewish people. While Cohen remains optimistic about the overall long-range survival of the American Jewish community, he foresees the disappearance of many presently existing Jewish family lines.
Okay. So is this an optimistic paragraph or a pessimistic paragraph?
Not so much.
I think it's realistic. I don't know,
Yeah.
optimistic or pessimistic.
But
I'm
not
watching so many of my friends'
optimistic.
families just go off into the diaspora and just disappear and not have any connection with Judaism at all. So it's
I
very
think it's
realistic.
sadder.
Well, I was saying my son's married to somebody who's not Jewish, and they did Hanukkah, and he tries to do all these things, and they do Christmas. So, they marry who they want to marry, right?
Right. You can't,
What can you say?
You can guide them, but you can't choose for them.
No, but they're happy, and that's
Right.
the only thing, right? That,
Right.
So you've got the cup, and I'm not even sure it's half. It's like the cup is half empty or half full, maybe a quarter full and 3/4 empty. But what I think both sides are saying is that our middle class liberal Jewish families, the numbers are going to get smaller and
Right.
smaller and smaller and smaller. They may continue. Those who are left may be strong Jewish families, but we're not going to have the numbers that we have today. So it's
And that's really scary.
And as we always say, thank God for the Orthodox.
And we see it at Temple Israel on Friday nights. There's all those people, 2,000 people show up for a rock concert on a Friday night, and that to them is 21st century Judaism. And
yeah, but I would look at it the other way around. So I would look at Temple Israel on a Friday night as a religious organization that has found a way to bring people into synagogue who may not otherwise come.
right,
So they've
right.
developed a product that somehow reflects Judaism to that group that they may not otherwise have.
It builds community,
Yeah.
right? But not Jewish identity.
No, but they believe they're Jewish,
I know they believe they're
Yeah.
Jewish, but
not from a traditional perspective.
it's that belief in Judaism. It's similar to communist Russia. That the Jews in communist Russia still identified as Jews, but all of the holidays, everything else, and all they had was the Russian religion, which included Christmas. And the Jews that came from Russia in 87, 88, they celebrated Christmas. They didn't know anything else. They said Christmas was a Russian holiday.
Right, so let me turn around what you're saying just a little bit. So I believe that the people who show up on Friday nights to Temple Israel, all 1,000 of them, I believe that they have strong Jewish identities through what Temple Israel does for them.
Right.
But I don't believe that the strong Jewish identities they have through what Temple Israel does for them transfers over to the next generation.
Right.
Okay, I don't think that happens.
Right.
So the intermarriage rate is really high. I don't know what percentage of those. Well, first of all, most of the people who show up at Temple Israel, have you been to Friday night service? So most of the people are
Once or
gray,
twice.
right? So it's largely an older population. I also don't know what percentage of that population are people who are intermarried, where there's one of the two who don't strongly identify. So yeah, I don't think it leads to stability of the current generation, but it doesn't lead to continuity.
Right.
Right.
I don't think it does.
my family all belongs there, so
Temple Israel,
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with it.
they do a great
I
job.
would
Good-
yeah,
good,
'cause
good
my
for
one
them.
sister, used to go all the
With-
time. Yeah, and I have some good friends, and they're there all the time, and
Right.
they have 2 sons, and they're going, but
Yeah,
whatever,
they-
you just
They
don't
love
know.
going. People
Yeah.
really like to go there.
So
I've got a cousin who's intermarried, and he's got 2 little twin sons, And I told him, you need to join Temple Israel. And he joined Temple Israel, and he's very involved, and his kids go to Sunday school.
Right.
And
So
this
they
is
do-
this is their level of Yiddishkeit that they need to know that they're Jewish. Where it goes from there, I don't know. But they're learning how you light candles, and you eat challah, and you say the motzi, and
All right, so let's look at the exception to the rule. Marlene, do you want to read? The only variance.
This is where we are, the only,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The only variance to the observations above lies within the Orthodox sector. Orthodox families, who constitute some 10% of the American Jewish population, do not reflect the trends of the wider Jewish community. Although
Domestic.
domestic problems of all stripes do occur within Orthodox circles, their incidence appears limited because it is less reported and certainly less acknowledged. Characteristically, the more religious observant the family and the more segregated it is from the general society, the less likely it is to experience intermarriage, a low birth rate, and other elements accompanying assimilation.
Okay, so the only exception to the current trend is in Orthodoxy. Somebody was telling me, maybe it's you, somebody was telling me just in the last week that they know somebody
Yeah.
who has 70 grandchildren.
The Moyle.
yeah,
who
our
did-
Moyle.
The Moyle.
Menachem
Someone has
Bacher
110.
Yeah.
110
God.
grand.
Yeah,
Was
Rose.
it
And
hit
Jerry
so many-
Beale's sister has over 70 grandchildren.
Right, right. That's
All Orthodox.
I mean, I really think it's the only way. I just think the outer accepting society is just too strong, and it's too easy. I mean, and I say this with, one kid who's married a Jewish girl, and my daughter who knows yet. But I just don't think it's possible. I don't think Judaism is strong enough across the board to fight everything that's out there.
Well, you see these, when people end up, if they're Orthodox and they want to leave the family, it's like they basically want to lose the family. You know what I'm saying?
Not
But then
Depending.
that's
Right.
But my Harold's uncle, everybody was very religious in that family. But I think one of them had like 6 or 7 kids, whatever, and the first one went off and married somebody who wasn't Jewish. So,
Well,
But then he came back. So you never know how they feel.
My oldest brother married somebody who wasn't Jewish. At the time we went to B'nai David, Rabbi Donin was our rabbi,
Mm-hmm.
and he told my parents to sit Kaddish. And my parents said, we won't do that. They didn't go to the wedding, and 9 months later their first grandchild was born, and boy did they invite them back in. So I mean, I have,
Yeah, you have to. I
and
guess
it's,
if you love them, you got to deal with them.
But it's really complex
It is.
because the more you want to be open to American society and the more you want to enjoy the liberties of American society, the harder it is to keep your kids back on the farm, right?
Mm-hmm.
right, but
The slippery slope.
Right, the Orthodox, line is that if they marry out, that they are out, but not everybody goes with that because it's still your child.
Well, but the flip side is, you have an Orthodox daughter and an Orthodox son. Okay, we don't see either of your children having 8 and 10 children. That's probably not going to happen. I have 2 Orthodox sons. They're one is married, no grandchildren. So here we have the conservative branch becoming more religious, but they're still not procreating at the rate that the
Right, so there's orthodoxy and there's orthodoxy,
Right.
right? So if you look at modern orthodoxy or left-wing orthodoxy, they tend not to have as many kids as centrist and right-wing orthodoxy is. The modern Orthodox see themselves as, I need to have enough money to give my children top education and take them to swimming lessons and take them to ice skating lessons, take them here. So I can't afford to have 10
15
kids,
children.
right, 15
It's more
children.
like yeshiva universities,
Right.
straddling both worlds.
Right, the centrists are different. They say we have to have as many kids as we possibly can.
Yes.
And that,
As many as Hashem will allow.
so many as Hashem will allow, and Hashem will look out for us
right.
down the line. So that's why you end up with so many kids.
Right.
So, what this article says is that now it's 10%. I think it's a little bit higher now from the last census. I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but I mean, what's going to happen, probably still in our lifetime, is that the percentage of liberal and centrist Jews is going to go down, 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 and the percentage of Orthodox Jews is going to go up. We're going to see it, we'll probably see it even more dramatically in Israel, where in Israel the more liberal, Chiloni, secular Jews have 2 and 3 kids, if they have that many, and the Orthodox are having 10 or 15 kids.
And the more Orthodox usually also marry younger, and the more modern Orthodox and conservative tend to marry later.
Right.
So
there really is that divide.
Right.
All right, I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs. You can read them at your leisure. Turn to the last paragraph, which says the family. See it?
It's my turn.
Okay.
No, it's Mitch's turn.
Oh, you're going to read?
Okay. I want to read the first line. I love the first line. The first line says, the family is the nexus between individual and society. So it's really saying that the family is the core. So the family is what develops Judaism in the individual, but the family is also what brings Judaism into society as well. So it's talking about the extreme importance of family and family life and how family life ought to be. So the welfare of both is dependent upon the success of the family as an institution in fulfilling its primary goals of socializing and educating its members. So how did the individual learn to be Jewish? Through the family. And how do you develop a strong Jewish society? Through the family. So you really have to work on family education. Family education is
just sending your kid
essential.
to a religious school, but then they come home to a secular family, is not necessarily going to give you a religious child, because
or even a positively identifying Jewish child. Okay, so where are we? Similarly, individual Jewish identity and the viability of Jewish communal life in the United States are tied to the cultural integrity of the American Jewish family. This says the same thing in just different words. In America, the family is what ties everything together. The historic Jewish family in various countries and in various periods has demonstrated great resilience in the face of physical and spiritual and economic pressures. Ironically, it is the relative absence of these pressures in America that presents a challenge to Jewish survival. And it's because we don't have these challenges of anti-Semitism, we don't have these challenges of pogroms, we don't have these challenges of being herded into smaller places, that we're having problems with the family. External anti-Semitism is not forcing Jews to remain together. They are comfortably accepted and acceptable within American culture. A low birth rate, high intermarriage, and a diverse forms of family life present new and different challenges to the American Jewish family. Given the inexorably integrative forces of American society and the resultant parallel trends among Jews, note Lipset and Rabb, it is reasonable to predict that the Jewish community as a whole will be severely reduced in numbers by the middle of the next century. I have to tell you, by the way, that I remember, it must have been in the 70s, an article came out that said, based upon current trends in Judaism and Jewish population growth and number of children by family, by the year 2050 or something like that, they said there'll be 20,000 Jews in the country. It was a really scary prediction.
Thank
20,000
God.
Jews what?
In the country.
Oh.
That there would be so few Jews left. They didn't know about the tremendous growth in the Orthodoxy, and assimilation wasn't as high as it was, as they thought it would be. In an attempt to forestall this outcome, the organized Jewish community is developing policies and programs aimed at supporting and strengthening the family. The next few decades are sure to reveal the results of these efforts. So we're not talking at all today about what federations are doing and what JCCs are doing. But I think they all believe that family education is is important, that family education is really where things are. Yeah.
What isn't mentioned here is the whole gay movement. Like, how many people has that taken out of the Jewish equation? And yes,
Mhm.
some gay couples have babies. But I wonder about that.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, have studies ever been done? Like, of that subset of Jews, what kind of impact does that have?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But
Well,
what?
although now that, you know,
Yeah, there's
gay
all-
people can get married
And have children.
and have children, and they can both actually be the parent to that child. I think that it won't make as much difference as previously when, you know, it was so much harder for them to adopt or,
maybe.
But it also depends upon the level to which they're accepted by the communities, right?
Right.
Well,
So,
synagogues are becoming more inclusive. So, but are conservative rabbis doing gay marriages at this point?
they're supposed to be allowed to.
actually Steve Weiss.
Did one the
Just
other,
did
yeah,
one.
Did one the other day.
Did I tell you the story about my little synagogue in Buffalo? We had a tiny synagogue of about 35 families. And at one point we had an intermarried couple who wanted to become a member of the congregation, and then we had a gay couple who wanted to be members of the congregation. And we were small, and we liked the people, and we're trying to figure out what to do.
Was
So
this recently or?
No, this was like 15 years
Right,
ago.
okay.
So we had a synagogue meeting. You know, it's like a committee of the whole. So everybody
Right.
gets together and we talk this through. And so what we ended up doing was we, at the time, just right before the meeting, we had family memberships. So the question was, could we give these couples family memberships? So what we ended up doing was we got rid of family memberships and we only had individual memberships. So that meant that it didn't matter what kind of family you were. You could just join. I mean, the non-Jewish spouse couldn't join the congregation, but the Jewish spouse could. And the two people, the gay people could certainly join. Nobody cared. Because we weren't looking at them as a family, looking at them as individuals. So that was our way out of it.
Right.
All right, so each of you have some books here. Take a look, just take a couple of minutes. And I would ask you you don't have to read it, but I'm asking you to look at the table of contents and tell me what you think the perspective of the author is in terms of how to raise a Jewish child by the topics that they cover. And also, what populations are they talking to?
I'm sorry.
What populations are they talking to? Which kinds of parents are they talking to?
They seem like very liberal, maybe not as educated or familiar Jewish parents. It starts with values and goals as opposed to halakha or ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Creating Jewish space. So again, it's very neutral and accessible kind of things for anybody. Making community, joining a synagogue. Well, if somebody's Orthodox, they don't need to even be told the importance of joining a synagogue.
But they could be Baal Tshuva. I met some Baal Tshuvas yesterday at the menorah lighting in Ferndale. Very interesting. One young man was brought up in Rochester, and his wife. They're both Baal Tshuvas, and it was very interesting.
So you would suggest that Diamond's book, or Diamond, I don't know how she pronounced it, she's suggesting, she's talking to a largely Jewishly uneducated population.
Or less, attenuated maybe. Moment-to-moment blessings for every day, morning and evening. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
This one seems totally
so
the
it's a how-to
opposite.
book, and this book is what?
Totally opposite of what she's saying.
In what way?
That they're telling them, how to be a Jewish family, everything that you have to know about. I mean, that you would know, but, That's what I would think. Unless they know all this stuff, but
But even that word heritage, that word heritage is nowhere in here.
Yeah.
It's something to be passed down.
So it's not the heritage to be passed down, it's the values that.
You know, it's just values and goals.
And this one, I mean, it looks like, because it starts with how I lost one faith and found another, so it looks like this was actually written by somebody who had converted, but then it's kind of looking almost maybe through the Torah to find different ways of parenting. Because it says the blessings of acceptance and the blessings of having someone to look up to, and honoring your mother and father, and blessings of a skinned knee, why God doesn't want you to overprotect your child. So it's using, you know, what traditional Jewish teachings are, and then bringing them to the, you know, the family in a way.
Yet
that
she
can-
doesn't even, I mean, I've read articles that referred to Friday nights, and they don't do Shabbos. You know, she's like, when my
This
kids are
one?
going to a party.
Mobile?
Yeah. I mean, she's,
Yeah, sometimes she does Shabbos.
yeah.
And this one's
But it
by
was
Rabbi
just-
Gordis, who Fran and I have met. And he starts with like 10 different introductions about different things that might be a challenge to raising Jewish children. And then it's got Jewish Parenting 101, immersion, memories, and identity. And then he moves on to making space for God and the wonders of Shabbos.
Yeah, he's
And,
definitely,
Yeah, and
in the-
Rabbi Gordis is a fascinating guy. He lives in Jerusalem, and
yeah, he's definitely got the Jewish part down of the Jewish
And
part.
God's
and
not
he's-
even mentioned
and he's-
anywhere.
I
What
think
is
he's
that?
educated at JTS, and he's modern Orthodox. He's an interesting guy.
And the name God is not even mentioned in this.
Anywhere in the, okay.
Not in the table of contents.
Well, and this one says losing your fear of the G word. so kind of saying, you know, don't be afraid
Yeah.
to talk about God, but
My parents never did.
I mean, even the density of what your table of
Oh, yeah,
contents
it's got
is
amazing amounts.
encyclopedic.
it's an almanac.
Ah, okay.
But-
that's probably why.
I don't see anything that's. It's
Oh, it's
more.
almost Schechter Shalomi.
Or
That's
it's,
that's
that's got everything in
the
here.
renewal movement.
All right, so this one is definitely encyclopedic. So this one, just anything you want to
It's got
know,
anything you gotta read.
it's in there. This one is clearly written to a more liberal audience. This one, you'll see in a bit, has a whole different orientation than the others, because this one is written by a PhD psychologist who has a different mindset. And this one also assumes that parents don't know a whole lot. So 1, 2, 3 assume that parents don't know a whole lot. This one doesn't care if parents don't know a whole lot, and doesn't try to tell them a whole lot in
Right,
locals.
basically.
But let's take a look and see.
So what are you saying, that this one doesn't, they're telling you everything?
It does try to tell you everything.
Yeah.
You know, anything
What-
you
what book
possibly
is
could
that
want to
one?
know about being a
Right,
good Jewish parent.
yeah.
But let's look at page 3 of the handouts I gave you. So the first one I have is, let me just tell you one other thing before we look at it. So for about 5 years, I worked for the Florence Melton Adult Mini School that's now just called Florence Melton. And my job in the Florence Melton School was to be responsible for the PEP program. PEP stood for Parent Education Program. So the Melton School got a whole lot of money from the Avichai Foundation to develop a program for young parents, a Jewish literacy program for young parents. So because they knew Melton was so good at what they did, they wanted them to develop this program. So for 5 years, I was responsible for developing the curriculum, training the staff, and monitoring the success of the program. Avichai gave all this money to Melton because they thought that if young parents could attain Jewish literacy, that they would be more likely to put their kids into day schools. And Avichai's...
They also had given all the books to the Jewish Academy kids for them to have the Jewish literacy.
Okay.
Little libraries.
Yeah.
So
they really
it was
are into that.
their belief that if you took a parent in their 30s and late 20s and showed them the importance of being Jewish, that they would then be more likely to put their kids into Jewish day schools. So I'm going to refer back to that as we look through some of these things and talk about what I found out. And since I left, they've developed a different program, but we can talk about that too. So anyway, the first one here is Daniel Gordis. So as Ed said, Daniel Gordis was JTS trained. This book came out in 1999. It was just after he made Aliyah and moved to Israel. If you remember, did we read it or not? Yeah, we did read it. This Daniel Gordis is the same one whose stuff we read last time about his son who asked if he had to go into the army. Remember, that's the same Daniel Gordis, about his son who was worried about going to the army, and that never would have been something in America. And now he is the head of the Shalem College in Jerusalem, which is a non-religious liberal arts college in Jerusalem. I don't know how well it's doing, but it opened up a couple of years ago and had a core curriculum. Everybody had to take the core curriculum. So here is something from the beginning of what he had to say. And whose turn is it? Your turn? Okay.
Let's be honest. Is that where you want me to start?
Yeah.
Let's be honest. It's a lot tougher today to ensure that our kids will grow up to be committed Jewish in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere than it was just a generation or two ago. Ironically, that's because the world our children or grandchildren will confront is no longer hostile to the Jewish people. Jewish ideas and Jewish traditions, no longer hostile to the Jewish people, Jewish ideas and Jewish traditions. In the old days, when we could rely on secular world harboring some negative feeling about Jews, Jewish parents could assume that their children's Jewish identities would be reinforced by the hostile outside world. But today, no one's going to remind our kids that they're Jewish. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know. This was written a few years ago.
Yeah, that's right. They'll be able to work in virtually any law firm, business, professional office, or join almost any social organization, live in any neighborhood, choose any way of life regardless of their Jewish heritage. This attitude is both good news and bad. Simply continue?
Yeah.
Simply put, Jewish parenting is about immersion, memories, and identity. In other words, the job of the Jewish parent is to create a Jewish home where there's enough ongoing Jewish moments, immersion, so that our children will remember their childhood years as deeply Jewish memory and will ultimately come to see being Jewish as an integral part of who they are, identity.
So there are three components to his book, and he says these are the three most important things to raising a Jewish child, a child who will continue to be Jewish. You know, the definition of a Jew is somebody, whose grandchildren are Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you maintain that continuity across 3 generations? And so he says the first thing is immersion, which means is you have to steep your child in Jewish experiences. They have to be involved in Jewish experiences on a regular basis. Number 2, you have to create memories. And then if they're immersed and if they have memories, solid Jewish memories, then that leads to the development of a solid Jewish identity. So I would say that the most important part, and maybe I said this already, but the most important part in today's world of for a Jewish parent is to create in their children positive Jewish memories. And you do that by immersion, at least giving them Jewish things to remember. If they don't have those memories, then they're not going to want to continue, and they're not going to want to pass those along. So what we're doing is our job as parents is to pass things on from generation to generation, and also to create those memories in those kids that pass on from generation to generation. The best example of that is Pesach. So what's Pesach all about?
Food,
Telling
singing,
our children.
storytelling,
Yeah,
You're instructed to tell your son.
crowds.
right. It's the Haggadah, right? Food, but it's the Haggadah.
Singing around the table.
It's the storytelling, and you want the children to
It's like
Be
a
part of it.
yearly
Right.
re-input
right,
of identity.
right.
And a
So
communal story.
right. So we have our communal story, our national story, our cultural story that we want to pass on from generation to generation, and then within families, we also have our family stories that we want to pass on from generation to generation. We can play this little game of how many of you have family stories that every time Pesach comes along, you say, I remember great Aunt Bertha, or I remember what your bubby did, or I remember what your uncle did, or do you remember fell asleep at the Seder every year, or I remember my grandmother's gefilte fish, or her chicken soup, or her whatever, and you pass those on from generation to
And
generation.
still cook the same recipes.
That's right, you cook the same
Exactly.
recipes. It's, but that's how one maintains a cultural or faith system, by making positive association with those things. If your primary positive association with being Jewish is bagels and lox, or your primary positive association is going to Hebrew school and hating to go to Hebrew school, those kids are not gonna continue. So I wrote down here, creating memories. A job of a parent, if they want the kid to be Jewish, is to create memories.
One of our kids has gone off the derrick, so to say, and he belongs to this Wiccan temple. He has brought a Passover Seder to the Wiccan temple even though he says he's not following Judaism. When he comes to our Seder, he makes a Seder during Passover that's totally kosher at his temple, and brings people in and shows them. And there's other people who are Jewish who have done it, who are involved with this too. And so it's like, he keeps saying, well, I'm not Jewish, but he still is. I mean, he still has that Jewish identity and that Jewish root that he's actually proud of, even though he can't deal with the organized part of the religion. It's as much as he wants to say he's not, he isn't fully not.
And one of the things that happened was he had a bad experience. He had bad experiences through organized Jewish religion, through synagogues, Hebrew school, whatever. And this and then working for a Jewish nonprofit, right? He had a number of problems that made him feel like he was excluded and wasn't appreciated, and so he left.
Right, and those are those negative things that
Right.
happen. I'm teaching on
interesting.
Tuesday nights. I'm teaching a Melton class, so I'm teaching a Melton history class. Melton has 4 classes. There's a Jewish practices class, and then there's a Jewish beliefs class, and a Jewish ethics class, and mine is the history class. The history class is often the hardest one to teach because people don't care about history so much. What I have to know about the Maccabees for, what do I have to know about King David for, what do I have to know about this stuff. But the point I've been trying to make for them is that these are our memories, these are our cultural memories. And one can't really understand what it means to be Jewish without having those memories. So what I'm trying to do is to create memories so that they'll understand. How do you understand the importance of the temple if you don't know much about the history of the temple and the destruction of the temple and Solomon's temple and King Herod's temple and what the Kotel really means and all those kind of things? So there's lots of touchstones that they just don't have. That
So few
that you
people
want to create.
understand that.
Right. So they don't understand and they don't care, but if you can show them the importance of doing it.
Are there most Jewish people that go there?
Pardon?
You know what I'm saying? Is it all for Jewish or whoever wants to?
Oh no, this one's all for Jewish. This is all Jewish people. These are all people who. Oh, you went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. Tell me some reasons why it's important to study history.
It's like I said. It's I didn't teach it to you, did I? I didn't do the
No.
dramas with you.
No, I did Michelle and Lauren both years.
No, okay.
I might have sat in some of yours, maybe one, but no.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the second one. The second one is by Anita Diamant and Karen Kushner. So Anita Diamant is the author of The Red Tent, author of several other books as well, and Karen Kushner, who wrote with her, is the honorary or international director of an interfaith program called Project Welcome out of San Francisco. And you can see she was a parent educator and she was a therapist, and her husband is Lawrence Kushner, who is a rabbi and author on
That's
his
what I
own,
was going to say.
Put two together.
who writes on Jewish mysticism. So she has the credentials. So the two of them wrote this book. So I just pulled a piece out of it, and it starts with cares about Judaism. So let me just explain to that. The previous paragraph says that what we have to create in individuals is a notion of caring about Judaism. Judaism has to matter to them. Okay, now Fran.
Cares about Judaism counts for more than your family background or even years of Jewish education. In a sense, Judaism is not inherited like brown eyes or freckles. It is transmitted, parent to child, by example as well as instruction in countless ways. The following 4 principles may help you find your way to be an effective Jewish model for your children.
Okay, so in the last one we were talking about creating memories, but we didn't say how to create memories. Okay. What we're going to have here are 4 basic principles that talks about how to get someone to care about Judaism or to create memories, as we talked about before. But the important piece here is example. So just keep that in mind, by examples. And not just saying do, but it's saying do as I do. Okay, keep going.
Model Jewish learning. You do not have to know everything. In fact, whenever a child asks a question that goes beyond your ability to answer, you have the opportunity to teach one of Judaism's greatest lessons. Learning is for everyone. When sons and daughters see mothers and fathers reading Jewish books, taking Jewish courses, bringing home Jewish questions and enthusiasms to the dinner table, they absorb the idea that Jewish study is something grown-ups do, and they will want to do it too.
Okay, so just to stop for a second. What's the first point? The point is that
We're doing something right here.
if
You shouldn't be reading at the table. If you're eating, whatever, yes.
but if you want your kids to do Jewish, then
You need to do
Model it.
Jewish.
yeah, you've got to model and
They've
you
got to
have,
see you doing what you say is important for them
right,
to do.
and you have to do Jewish. If you're going to send your kids to religious school on a Sunday morning, you also should be engaged in Jewish learning, or you should have Jewish books in your house. You show them this stuff's interesting. And one of the cardinal principles of good parenting is to know that it's not do as I tell you, but do as I do,
Right.
because people learn much more from example than they do from instruction. Direct instruction doesn't work nearly as well as seeing a model who you honor and respect do something. That's something that we know works really, really well. So you have to do Jewish. Okay, keep going.
Identify Jewish teachable moments. Everyday life is filled with what educators call teachable moments. Opportunity to tease out a fact, practice a skill, encourage appreciation, and introduce a new word, explain a moral dilemma, connecting Jewish moments or words or objects or values with your child's natural curiosity is a simple extension of this process.
Okay, so you understand what that means?
Yeah, I mean, if something comes up in their day-to-day thing, you teach about it. This is how we deal with this. Depending on...
Well, again, the Seder is a perfect model for this, because we have all kinds of objects at the Seder table, and it raises questions, and we talk about Jewish moments, and
Yeah, but they're talking about
Seder-
everyday life. They're talking
the
about a little kid coming home from school and saying, Susie got bullied today. And then you teach them. You use that as a moment, not just say, oh, that's too bad for Susie, but what can,
Right.
how can we look at this?
And it's also, how can we look at this from a Jewish perspective, right?
Right.
So you don't want to go overboard and turn everything into Jewish perspective,
No.
but you want to use that Judaism as something more to say than just...
And you
And
don't
just
have to
a
say, well, the
Is that-
Talmud says, you just say what it is, and
Done.
they'll know, this is coming from, my Jewish parent in my Jewish home, and it will, it should get recognized.
Going back to the Seder, one of my favorite things about the Seder is, in that piece of Talmud that we're going to be looking at in January, it says that the children are supposed to ask questions, right? The 4 questions that are listed that we sing, the Manishchana that we sing, are really there in case the children don't have any other questions to ask. So that's why to make sure that they ask questions. However, if any question that a child has asked that allows you the opportunity to say something about Pesach, then you've already got your mitzvah point for the evening. So technically, you could set your Seder table and then put all the chairs upside down around the Seder table. And then the kids walk in and they say, Daddy, why are the chairs all upside down today? And then you have the teachable moment. I'm glad you asked. And then you tell the story of Pesach. You know, our forefathers didn't even have chairs. They had to sit on the ground. And so but whatever it is, you try to find moments so that you
Did
can
you do that?
teach the kids. No, I don't do that. They have enough questions to ask. But I do make sure that there are people who present things at our Seder so that people can ask questions.
Yeah. Our Seder is known as the Seder of 4,000 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we actually have to make it short because it's getting way too close to midnight and we've got to actually eat dinner at some point. But it's like, sometimes he throws candy at somebody if they ask a good question, or, you know, a toy, or, yeah.
And you have to make it, and you have to do it, by the way, so that you age grade it, right? So
Yeah.
it's one thing to do with young adults. It's another thing with little kids. And what do you do to get the young kids to be interested? And what do you do to get the young kids to ask questions? But asking questions is really what it's all about. That Jewish teachable moments thing is really important. So you have to. We talked before about creating memories. Then we talked about modeling, and now we're talking about creating teachable moments. And then the last two.
Creating positive Jewish memories.
I didn't put anything else in there because we already talked about that.
And make room for holy moments.
Okay, so how do you make the secular holy? How do you make things special? We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. And then they go on and they talk about 3 basic principles that you have to instill in your children from the moment they're born. Okay.
Torah, Chuppah, and Masim Tovim.
You know what that is? Torah, Chuppah, and Masim Tovim.
It's
Good deeds.
Right.
Well,
and so
Torah is study, marriage, and
right, and every time you have a important life event, at the time of the bris or the girl naming, you say Torah, Chuppah, Masim Tovim. At the time of the wedding, it's Torah, Chuppah.
Right, and the rabbis always
You
make
know.
a joke at the bar mitzvah, not too soon, but
Right, yeah. The bar mitzvah is Torah, Chuppah, Masim.
Somebody's sick in the hospital, you take your kids to go to visit the sick.
Okay, so let's see what it says.
each of these ideas is both metaphor and goal. Each implies traditional values and demands authentic standards. And thought that they may seem like nouns, they are really imperative verbs.
So I like that. So
Yeah.
Torah, Chuppah, and Masim Tovim are not
Torah-
nouns. They are
Verbs.
They're
Torah
commands
means
to do.
learn, Chuppah means love, Masim Tovim means live righteously.
okay. So you have to teach your kids to learn. You have to teach your kids to love others, and you have to teach them to do the right thing, to do good deeds.
That's even better.
Okay. All right. So the third one here is Judy Hilton Dannon, who she's a rabbi, and she received, as somebody mentioned before, ordination from Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, who just died recently. He was the founder of the Renewal Movement, which is a very spiritual Jewish movement. So Shir not Tikva, which is the Renewal Congregation.
Sure.
Sure,
Shir Tikva is the Renewal Congregation here.
But Rabbi Schechter Shalomi comes from Rabbi Schneerson. Schneerson sends him out and sends him to Colorado with this whole new dance, and he was
Right. Yeah. He and Karl Bach were originally sent out by the.
Right.
Okay. Let's turn to the to the 5th page. Okay, and let's see what she has to add to our. It's interesting, by the way. I just realized this that most of our authors here are women, right? So we have one male rabbi who's. There is a book that I didn't use. It was To Raise a Jewish Child by Don and
Yeah, Rabbi Donan.
But I wanted to get things that were more contemporary, so I didn't use his book.
There's people who don't know that he died like a very long time ago. They think he's still.
We've got that book.
Okay. All right. So let's keep going.
Did you read?
No, Matt.
Good.
It is striking how many of the specific traits of strong and healthy families are fostered by a Jewish way of life. Paleo-Judaism offers a family, a shared religious core, and a spiritual orientation with many beloved rituals and traditions that center in the home. Moreover, the Jewish way of life values and emphasizes commitment, appreciation, quantities of shared family ties, the teaching of values and morals, service to others, participation in a community that gives psychological support in difficult times, and other traits of emotional health and stability.
Okay, so what's she saying here? Jewish family living is
Everything.
everything.
Right.
Or to answer the question that I have up here, the Jewish family living is healthy living.
Yeah.
So she's got a slightly different point here. She's not saying this is the way that you have to have a Jewish family by creating memories. What she's saying is if you live a Jewish family life, then you are having healthy living. So now let's go back to my PEP program. What we discovered was that these young families got very invested in what we were teaching if they felt it was going to promote the emotional, social, cognitive well-being of their children. So if we could show them that Jewish family living was good parenting and good family living, then they were likely to do what it was that we were promoting. And that was really, really important because they were invested, and young parents continue to be invested. They were invested in, let me give you a more ludicrous example. It's like you hear stories about parents who want to put their kids in just the right preschool so that they can get into Harvard 18 years later. So it's the same thing. What can I do to give my kids a head start or a jump ahead or a leg up? And if I think that Jewish family life is going to do that, then I'm gonna buy
on
it.
board.
So they would eat this stuff up in order to give their children a richer life. So that was a fascinating piece of it. It ties in with what
Anything
you said.
about God or spirituality or
No, it wasn't.
larger questions or.
No, that wasn't. When you're a young mother or a young father in your late 20s and your 30s, your life isn't about spiritual. Your life is about your kids, and that's what they're looking for. What can I do to promote life in my kids? So to give you another example, in the traditional Melton program, where the average student is somewhere between 50 and 70 years of age, what we learn is that those families, or those individuals who attend the programs, develop their appreciation for Jewish text and Jewish study, and they want to continue Jewish text and Jewish study, but there is little to no change in their Jewish practice. So if they didn't like candles before, they didn't like candles now. If they didn't go to Shul Shabbos, then they don't go to Shul Shabbos now. There's no change. Now, some of the families are already reasonably traditional. In the PEP family, so you were in the PEP program.
I was in the PEP program,
Right.
so what was the change?
Right, so in the PEP
If it wasn't
program,
that.
what we found is that there was change in practice. So
And the regular one, so the one for the older people, there was no change in what they chose to do. But
Right.
the PEP for sure, okay.
Right.
So the
Yeah.
PEP ones, I know people who started building sukkahs and having sukkah parties
That's right.
when they'd never done that before.
Were the goals
The old
different?
people didn't bother.
no,
yeah.
goals weren't different.
So the whole
Young people,
kavanah of both the PEP and regular was pretty identical. Not to change people, not to.
Well, so the program itself, Melton itself, the intent was not to change people. The program was to
Educate.
And with the supposition that people would be transformed, but the transformation was different with older people than it was with younger people.
well, part of it was that they had the supplemental handouts too. At least here they did. They had like a yellow sheet that went along with it that was more practical on how to do
Right,
things.
how to do it,
Yeah,
right.
In the PEP program.
Well-
yeah, the old people didn't get that.
Also,
Older.
for the older
It's
people,
a personal thing.
their children are grown and out of the house, so they're gonna do what they do.
The horse is gone and the barn doors are
Right.
closed.
And for the younger people, they are like, oh, I can bring this home. My kids will enjoy it. It's a good thing for my children. My children are young enough that this will make,
Right.
an
An
impact on them.
So, but what's the practical message? The practical message is that if you're going to try to promote Judaism in younger families, you don't teach Jewish history. We went back to that Jewish history thing. So the history thing of creating those kind of memories in the parents is nice, but that's not what they really need. What they really need is the practical how-tos.
It's how to parent.
How to parent.
How to build a
Jewish
sukkah.
life.
How to parent Jewishly,
Right.
and why building a sukkah is great for your kids.
Right.
Okay, and why lighting the candles every week is great for your kids, and why going to Simchas Torah is great for your kids.
Right.
All those whys of why those are going to make your children into stronger children is really what's important for
I mean,
those
it's
families.
interesting because it's resilience too. If you've raised a child who can count on certain patterns and traditions,
Right.
you know, there's a comfort and confidence there, a stability.
Right. So if you can teach them the importance of creating memories and lighting the Shabbos candles every week or having challah every week, or the importance of doing things together with your mommy and making challah at home
Right.
every week with your mommy. I mean, those are powerful things. And then that's what we found, by the way, was that, well, initially at least, we found that in the first year or two, parents who went through the Melton program were more likely to put their kids into day school. So then they gave us more money, so we extended the program. And what we found out was it didn't hold. That the decision to place your child in a day school was not based primarily on your increased sense of Jewish commitment. Your decision to put a child on day school was based upon finances and was based upon the perceived quality of the school.
Right.
So,
The perceived quality of the school is a big thing. I mean, you know, it's like, I want to send my kid to the best school in our area, and if it's the day school, they'll do that. If it's another private school,
right. So, assuming you have the money to put your kid into a private school, if Cranbrook is perceived to be better than
Right.
Hillel or Akiva, then you're going to put your kid into Cranbrook. If you're not Orthodox, if you're Orthodox, it becomes. If you're Orthodox, it's a different story. A whole bunch of day schools in Toronto, more than here. In Toronto, there are day schools that are private schools that happen to be Jewish. So, you know, the parents put their kids in because they see these schools as being high quality private schools that happen to have a Jewish curriculum. So, for instance, there's a school in Toronto that's it's called Bialik, totally secular school. There's no davening in the school. They teach the kids Hebrew and Yiddish, and it's bursting at the seams because parents are really happy with the quality of the education their kids are getting.
Isn't there a school for the arts too that's also Jewish there?
Yeah, there's a Heschel school.
Yeah.
So the Heschel school is like a conservative school, except it teaches more through the arts. Yeah, so that's its claim to fame. It's small. It's not bursting at the seams, but
it's just an interesting concept to have a Jewish school that teaches Hebrew and Yiddish, but yet doesn't have any davening. It's like,
Workman's Circle.
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I guess it's a workman's
So Bialik
circle.
is a workman's circle school.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so let's keep going and find out what else she has to say.
Many contemporary Jewish families are rediscovering that Judaism is a healthy and nurturing framework to raise a family. Parenting books and courses can help us to be good parents, but Judaism can offer our families even more opportunities for closeness, communication, and commitment.
Okay, so I was telling you before. Okay, keep going.
The revitalization of Judaism is happening, at least among a significant minority. Many among the younger generation have begun to make a real effort to re-Judaize their lives. Where this hasn't occurred, often the problem is not a lack of desire, but a lack of confidence. Many want to know more about Judaism or to do more Jewish things at home, but they feel ignorant and hence inferior. Someone who's extremely sophisticated and educated in secular life, yet virtually illiterate when it comes to Judaism, would often rather stay uninvolved and suffer the awkwardness of exposing this vulnerability.
Okay, so what's the biggest problem in terms of Jewish education for families?
Because they don't have the Jewish education.
Right.
Right.
And the ignorance and the fear, the intense fear
Right.
of not knowing. And these are people who are doctors and lawyers and accountants and engineers and financiers. But you put them in a situation where you could put a Jewish text in front of them.
They're 10 years old.
Yeah, they're 10 years old. Yeah. So it's how do you get past that? And that's what people experience in Melton too initially. They're really afraid to open their mouth because they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake or somebody's going to say they're stupid or they're bringing them back to be 10 years of age. So how do you get over that?
well,
That's
one
what these
of the
books are
things-
about, right? Why is it so big and why are these books all doing all these
Well-
basics? Is how do you get over the fear of getting started?
And so many of the Jewish classes now are taught in English, because otherwise, people who aren't fluent in Hebrew or Aramaic, would go, well, I can't go to those classes.
Right.
And
that's a 2,000-year-old problem, because if you remember, we were looking at some texts back from Roman times that were in Aramaic. Why? Because the Jews couldn't speak any Hebrew. They didn't know Hebrew. Okay, the last little piece here I put in here because all of our previous weeks we talked about honoring your parents. So, we're still on page 5.
Okay.
But this is Dannon's little piece on honoring your mother and father.
The primary task for parents is the development of the godly in our own characters, priorities, and deeds, to strive to be worthy of our children's reverence, and it is hoped to inspire them in ourselves to reverence for God. We must ask ourselves if we truly embody qualities such as patience, compassion, memory, justice, truth, and holiness in our lives.
Imitatio Dei.
Thank you. Our emulation, divine midot, is considered in Jewish ethical tradition to be one of the ways for a person to draw closer to God. Striving to be worthy of the role of father or mother is one way in which parenting is indeed a spiritual path.
Okay. So if a child honors and reveres and loves his parent, he is more likely to
Emulate that parent.
emulate the parent and love God. So that's what that imitatio Dei is. That God. What is parents' role? Parents' role is to be in the place of God here. So parents have to behave in a godlike way, and if parents behave in a godlike way, their children will honor them, and the children in turn will honor God as well. I don't know what the most current research is, but the old research used to be that it used to say that a child's perception of God was closest to his perception of his father or her father. So if the father was considered to be stern and militant, then God was considered to be stern and militant. And if parent was considered to be warm and loving, then God was considered to be warm and loving. Later research suggested that a child's perception of God was most related to his or her preferred parent. So not necessarily the father, it could be the mother as well. But what do we say? We say Avinu Malkeinu. We say our Father, our God. So how do we know what our Father is? We know our Father by our earthly father. Puts a lot of responsibility on us in terms of how we should be treating our children. Okay, let's look at the last one. So this last one is Wendy Mogul. I told you she's a PhD psychologist. So she's a therapist. She's worked with families. She has all these thoughts about parenting. And so she's not interested so much in teaching you how to be good Jewish parents. She's interested in teaching you how Judaism can lead to good parenting. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. So she's not interested in teaching the basics that all these other books are. She's more interested in saying that these are aspects in which Judaism can can help us to be good parents. So when she didn't convert to Judaism. She was totally non-observant.
Oh,
and
okay, so that's when
right.
I lost one guy.
Right.
Again.
So along the way, she became more observant, and she found her path through Judaism, and now she talks and tries to explain how Judaism can help you become a better parent. Okay.
But she's not Jewish?
She is Jewish.
She is Jewish.
Okay. So let's read the first part here.
Judaism provides a very different kind of perspective on parenting. By sanctifying the most mundane aspects of the here and now, it teaches us that there is greatness not just in grand and glorious achievements, but in our small, everyday efforts and deeds. Judaism shows us that we don't have to be swallowed up by our frenzied materialistic world. We can take what is valuable from it without being wholly consumed.
Okay. So what's the first thing she's saying? Sanctify the mundane. Okay. So it doesn't have to be the big and the better and the best of everything. There's holiness and spirituality in the smallest thing. And you have to find that holiness and spirituality. I saw a kid today, 12-year-old girl, who happened to be Jewish. So she came in with her cell phone, which she had trouble letting go of. And then she came in with her iPad. So I said to her, what did you get for Hanukkah? Well, so it turns out that she has her cell phone that she's, is attached to her. And then she's got her iPad that the school gave her. And then she has her iPad that that her parents gave her. So she's got 2 iPads. And for Hanukkah, she got an Apple Watch. So I'm just thinking about as I read this.
And she's
about
12 years old?
I'm 12 years old. I'm thinking about the pleasures of the everyday and the mundane and the simple, and her whole world revolves around
A screen.
Four screens.
four different
Yeah.
screens. And this is the first time I saw her, so I told her to bring her iPad with her. So we spent about 20 minutes where she was showing me her favorite game on her iPad, which is a Kim Kardashian
Oh my God.
game, in which she was constantly changing Kim Kardashian's clothing and buying new clothing and going into clothing stores. It was all cartoons.
Consumerism.
Yeah, oh yeah, really. So, what are the priorities here, and what is she's learning? It's certainly not the sanctification of the mundane. It's the religion of consumerism.
And the parents give her everything she wants. Why isn't she better suited to school and friends? Why doesn't she have any friends?
That's right. All right. I asked her, because a lot of parents what parents are supposed to do is they're supposed to say that all screens are off at a certain time in the night.
Right.
She doesn't have that, so she just uses it. So the next sentence says, the cornerstone principles of Jewish living are.
Moderation,
Moderation.
celebration, and sanctification.
Okay, keep going.
Through these principles, we can achieve a balanced life no matter what culture we happen to inhabit. The Jewish way is to continually study, learn, question, and teach these principles. By applying them to our family life, my husband, my children, and I have found some mooring and meaning in an unsteady world. In my professional life, I have seen families transformed by this new perspective on their problems in living.
Okay, I'm sorry for the typos. So what she's saying here, what does living a Jewish life do for you?
It gives you moderation, an
Yeah.
opportunity to celebrate,
Right.
and a chance to
Right.
sanctify
So
moments.
you have to understand that living a Jewish life is a healthy family life. That living a Jewish life supports everything that there is and what we know about good parenting. So she's not interested in her book so much as saying, well, this is how you make Shabbos, and this is how you do this, and this is how you do this. She's more interested in saying, if you buy the package, this speaks to the parents, right? If you buy the package, then this is going to make
This is how
for
to apply it.
a good, healthy life. Okay, and she goes on a little bit more. So
The principle of moderation teaches us to do two seemingly incompatible things at once, to passionately embrace the material world that God has created while exercising self-discipline. Celebration and gratitude are key concepts in Judaism and Jewish child rearing. We are commanded to be constantly on guard for opportunities to be grateful for the richness of the world and for our good fortune, whatever form it takes. Sanctification is the process of acknowledging the holiness in everyday actions and events. Our traditional expression for home is the same as the word for a house of worship, mikdash me'at, or little holy place. Our dining table with our children is an altar. It has the potential to be the holiest place on the planet. There are rules for reproof, for praise, for greeting in the morning, and going to sleep at night, because in Jewish tradition, each of these activities is holy.
So what's she telling us here? She's telling us that routine is important, and understanding routine is important, and making all the daily activities important, and it lends a structure to life.
And where it says our dining table with our children is an altar, I mean, it's saying we eat dinner together. You're not off at this, and you're not off at this, and you're not off at this, and we
Put your phone away.
right, and we sit down together and have family time.
Now, around this table, we all have adult kids. One of the things that has disappeared in contemporary American family life is the family dinner.
Yeah.
So if you sit down and ask a family if they've had a family dinner, it's generally no. People eat on the run. Mom comes in at one time, dad comes in another time, the kids are early. The sense of having time when the whole family can sit around and is not rushed, and just being able to talk and communicate and what happened during the day, that has largely disappeared. So one of the benefits of Shabbat dinner is Shabbat dinner is a time when the family does eat together. It's it's a time when if the kid says, "Well, I have to go to the dance, or I have to go to the hockey game, or I have to go to this," the answer
Or football
is
game or
football game, whatever it is. No, Friday night dinner is Friday night dinner, and it's the family dinner. It's a time to get together. So it's Judaism saying the sanctification of sanctification of the table. And then going back to the PEP class again, so what is that saying? It's saying that living a Jewish life is important for your family life.
I remember reading, I don't know, some article, what keeps kids the most centered and off drugs, and it was a regular family meal, sense of celebration, some sort of spiritual routine, and it was like everything was combined in Shabbos dinner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like all of those elements were components of a Shabbat meal.
Right. And that also goes back to what we were saying at the beginning about creating memories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so creating memories of the whole family being together. On the negative side, my father used to work Shabbos, and my early Shabbos memories was always having Shabbos dinner with my father, who always came in late. All right, but what you want to do is you want to develop memories of everybody sitting around and lighting the candles and sitting and not having to rush someplace else
And turning off the phones.
Yeah, turning off the phone.
Yeah, that's, I mean, my kids, that's the one thing that they all do is when it's time to sit down for a family meal, they don't answer the phone. His phone is away.
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
I managed to turn it off for Shabbos, so it's not there.
It's turned off for Shabbos, but they turn it off.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, they turn it off.
It's
All
not
right.
so different from when we were younger. At least there was the TV.
Right.
Turn off the freaking TV and have a conversation. So
That's
it's not
right.
so much
Don't have the
just
TV. You don't
phones.
need to watch TV while you're eating dinner.
Right.
Right.
None of us
The
are
TV dinner was the
That's
bane
right.
of the American.
Destroyed it.
I watch it all the time. My kids never.
Yeah.
They know what to watch.
So I think the big difference is if you live before 1910 or 1950, whatever it was, Jewish family education was to teach your kids the mitzvahs and teach the kids the ritual and teach the kids the Torah. We do that today, but it has a whole different spin on it. So now it's not you do it. It used to be you do it because God said you do it, right? Now is you do it because it's good for you, and it's good for your family, it's good for your children, it's good for the husbands, and it's good for the wives. That's why you have to do the thing. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy it. For me to say to any of your kids, do it because God told you to do it, is not going to work.
Well, God told us to do it, and here are the benefits.
Right. Or here are the benefits, and then
By the
once
way.
they get into it, then we can say God told us. There has to be a reason.
Right.
They have to buy into the system. So anyway, let's just look at the last little piece. These are, according to Wendy Mogul, the basics of what make good parenting and good Jewish parenting. And it's also at the beginning of her book, and the rest of the book goes through. But I think these are all, it's a really nice summary to everything that we've been talking about. You want to read, Mariah?
Following the blueprint, Jewish parents that followed for 300 years, and I believe it will work in any era, any city, except that your children are both unique and ordinary. Teach them to honor their parents and respect others. Teach them to be resilient, self-reliant, and courageous. Teach them to be grateful for their blessings.
Teach.
Teach them the value of work. Teach them to make their table an altar. Teach them to accept rules and to exercise self-control. Teach them the preciousness of the present moment. Teach them about God.
Okay. So where does God come in? God comes in at the end, but God is there.
Right.
Right? But God is there. I like the one about teaching about the preciousness of the present moment. Enjoy the moment, appreciate the moment, look at how great things are right now. When my kids were little, I used to have a walk of almost 2 miles to shul every week, and I loved it. And I have 6 years between my kids, so I had 6 years with one, and then time with the other. And we would use the time to walk to shul to have our individual conversations, and I would always point out things to them on the way. Look at this blade of grass, or look at the frog, or look at the person there, or look at whatever. And when they were little, it was fun, because they would really appreciate my pointing everything out and living in the moment. Then at a certain point, maybe probably when they turned around 10, then the innocence was gone, and it became, why are you doing this? You know, why are you telling me these things? Well, yeah, leave me alone.
Did they go to shul every week?
They still went to shul, but they didn't want that, and I would constantly be embarrassing them. You know, I would stop and talk to people on the way and ask them what they were doing and why they were planting these flowers, how hard it was for them to shovel the driveway, or whatever. Why are you talking to these strangers?
And now they do it, right?
Yeah, but now they do it. Yeah, and now they're back into it again. They do it. You know, I only have, my daughter doesn't have any kids now, but they appreciate it now. That living in the moment and doing the moment is important. At any rate, thank you for learning with me for the past
Thank you for
8
teaching
weeks.
us.
Yeah.
And thank you for learning from me for the past week.
Right.
And I enjoyed doing this. It gave me a way to put this together too and to share it. I hope you appreciated it.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Was there anything I should have done differently? I guess I should ask you.
No, it was just very interesting. Yeah.